right, everybody, welcome back to the Mindset Matters channel where we talk about different mindset topics. I am your illustrious host, Kevin Anytime, and this is my boy Zach. And so, if you like mindset topics, definitely like and subscribe because that is what you will be getting different types of mindset topics from any place we can really think of, really. So, the topic we got for you today to jump right into it is it's the Bible. We're talking about the Bible today, y'all. And you know what? What's interesting about that whole thing is usually when there are Bible discussions, besides like Christians actually, practicing Christians that go on this platform, they're always talking about if it's true or not. And that's just one thing that was weird to
Mm.
me because I I don't think that matters. I just like that's just my honest opinion. I really do not think that that matters, man. It's like, can the information be applied to our living experience today? And that's to me is by far the greatest portion of what the discussion should be about. Um, yeah, because to me, I've identified with so many different things, and I've said this a lot of times, but I've identified and taken things from so many different walks of life and people and places and stories and movies and books that I'm like, that shouldn't be the one of the main arguments. It should be they should only really because hands down is the book one of the greatest books that has ever been written. Absolutely. It's the greatest book that has ever,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
what what's the deal with, if the things are true or not? And I get people might get thrown into the weeds with that just because it's like they want to label it. It has to be labeled. Is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? What is it? Is it historical? What is it? And some people are obsessed with
Yeah.
it. But as I've grown through life, I've just learned how to grab what works and just work it. Like that's just my MO. It's like, man, if it works, like grab it and make it work. And if you can back it behind your belief system as well and also utilize it in a beneficial way to where it's not damaging to you or anything like that. I don't see an issue with it. But anyway, so this is what we want to talk about, y'all. Went on a tangent for a second. Um, but we're gonna go into first of what is your favorite thing or story behind the Bible. And start off on a different note than what people usually do. Because the writings are great. Like that's all I care about is if you can picture it and see how powerful it can translate into your life. That's what matters,
Hmm.
right? But what do you think? What's your favorite story, man, that you've had?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this for a while, and to me it's just crazy. And I can't remember the stat, but the Bible has so many writers, and the fact that they could all write a book and it all congeal and basically share the same message, which is the Bible's about Jesus. I mean, that's what the whole book's about. Even if we go back to Adam and Eve, technically it's it's all every story you can relate back to Jesus, which I love that about it, and I do think Jesus is the most important thing about the Bible. But if I had to pick, um, and maybe this is just because I'm reading it right now, but when Saul, who was a Jewish man who literally was responsible for the murder of Christians, turns into Paul because Jesus meets him on the road to Damascus, and is like, think about what you're doing, and you know Jesus, basically changes his life in that moment. um, and he Saul becomes Paul, and he becomes one of, if not the most important pillar of the Bible. I mean, he think about all the books he's written, the uh, the first days of the church, talking about the Church of Acts, and then going into Romans, which Romans is, if I had to pick a favorite book of the Bible, it's probably Romans,
Mm.
just because the application of Romans is just super deep and just super practical. Um, but that story of God using someone who you would never ever think that they could be used for that purpose, changes that person's life and becomes one of the most important mouthpieces of the faith. I think that's just, it's insane to think about. It's incredible though, because of who he became in Christ. So yeah, if I had to pick one, Saul turned to Paul is top. It's up there for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's you know, Paul's his story to me is so interesting because he was a madman in a certain reality, and he wasn't living in that reality. And so that's almost a this is a good example for people that don't know what they're doing. Like really don't know, really don't understand, like, oh, I'm just messing up and really don't get it. That's
Yeah.
how we can really look at the way this is written and why it's so important to understand and try and take that point of view from God's standpoint, because it's like he was killing Christians. I mean, when you say it, it's like,
Right.
oh man,
Right.
okay, yeah, dude was diabolical at one point. He was
Yeah.
the villain to like get away from, even though it's not a whole lot mentioned like that. They give you glimpses, but it's a very short synopsis of what they could have been going into, right? But it's like,
Oh yeah.
let's not go that deep into it because as far as we know, yeah, he's killing Christians, right? So it's like, wow, okay, but then once he has this vision, which is very interesting enough because it's happening to a number of people, man. I'm running into it on social media, which is interesting.
Mhm.
MIA, a couple of very famous people have said, dude, hold up, nope, like I don't care what's going on. This is real, and I'm not even gonna
Yeah.
play with it. And that should make people think. But I think because it's not blown out of proportion, people just don't really pay that much attention to it. It doesn't get that much in conversation. But it always helps me to try and think from that angle of like, man, okay, dude, like I could be messing up back to back to back to back to back. And it's like once I get the accurate knowledge and really
Mhm.
know, and he knows I really know, then it's like, okay, cool. Now we can start trying to go on the right path. And then if you make mistakes along the line, then that's gonna be a whole different situation. Then you making
Mhm.
these really impactful, drastic mistakes, but out of ignorance though. It's
Mm.
like that's a very loving, understanding thing because it was obviously happening, and obviously God doesn't like that. So it was like, all right, I'm gonna help you out because you have the fire, but you're in
Yeah.
the wrong direction, and so it took that
Yeah,
much of an intervention for him to chill out. But
for sure.
for me, man, it was always it's a mixture, dude. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Mine was always the exciting stories, the stories that, just made you be like, whoa, dude, like that's that is some superhero type of stuff, man. I always was gravitated towards that because it
Mhm.
just was fascinating to me, man. David and Goliath, Moses and the Red Sea, um, Samson and the bears and lions and stuff, and
Yeah.
it's just like I was like, dude, this is next level, man. Like I remember a lot of the stories, but the ones that stand out are like that. And it's I try to be careful with that too, because it's like you got to tread lightly with certain stories like that, because even God with David, he was like, you was wrecking people, man. I gotta put you in a certain category because you lived by the sword. So and it's to me it's interesting when I meditate on stuff like that. I'm
Hmm.
just like, what what was going on? Like, we really got to dive into this stuff. This is why I like really talking about biblical stuff, because it's like
Yeah.
trying to see it from God's perspective is very interesting. In instances like that, because it's like, well, back in the day, they were allowed to just freaking slay each other. Like,
Right.
it was something that would not get you killed if it was for the right cause, right? And the right cause back in that time was based off of God's standards and what they knew of up until that point.
Yeah.
So it just gives you another look into, like, okay, man, okay, so this was allowed at one point, and that has to give you an idea of what, not something that God enjoys, but I don't want to get that twisted, but it was something that he's like allowing the human capability to go through, right? If we can
Hmm.
neutralize it, to try and keep it neutral, because we don't want to deem it like, oh yeah, God loves violence, and then let's go kick some butt and do kung fu. It's like, no, that that
Yeah.
was that was something that for that time period was necessary for that time period based off of how God wanted things to go. So
It served a purpose. Exactly. Yeah.
right. So you really want to look at that, because the things we know is that God hasn't changed, right? All of that stuff, everything that has happened up into this timeline, he gives you a glimpse into his entirety of his personality. So
Yeah.
that's why it's really important to try and dive into these things and really understand the writings and what they mean and how it can translate and transform your life. And when you have feelings of doubt or overstressed or super depressed about yourself, it's like
Hmm.
God's seen a lot. He's seen a whole bunch of what we could do, and he's
Yeah.
seen the probably some of the well, not probably. He's seen the darkest parts of us. He knows the darkest parts of us, but he always knows
100%.
with his design. There's always light. There's always going to be more light than the darkness. You could think and try and push for the more darkness, but you're gonna end up going back to the light, because that's just how we're built. You know what I mean? We're
Yeah.
built with that. Um, so yeah, for me, if I had to pick one that I would want to really be like, though, is Solomon. Solomon asked for wisdom as opposed
Mm.
to the riches and the different stuff that he was offered, and I'm like, that's deep, man. That's really, really deep. And it's funny, because some of these TikToks I see people be walking past and they like, would you $5,000 or a dinner or a question with Jesus or something like that. They be saying that funny stuff. And I'm like, people have no idea. I'd just have to ask one thing. That would be it. But yeah, screw the money, dude. What some people choose the money too. I'm like, man, no, no, you got to get that info. But that's probably who I would choose, because one of the stories that I like about Solomon is that in particular. But the other one is
Yeah.
um when the two ladies came in with the baby, and I'm like, oh,
Yes.
man, that is crazy, dude. Because he's like, all right, we're just gonna split the baby in two.
Yeah.
And the one is like, oh, whatever, I'll, screw it then. I'll take the half. And the other's like, what? Let her have what the heck? And that's
Yeah.
when he was able, like, that was like back in the day, I'm sure people were just like, oh snap. Because whatever the king said, like decrees like that, they usually were reluctant to pull back on. But he was like, no, I'm
Yeah.
gonna figure out what the heck is real here. Like,
Yeah.
who's real, who's not, what's going on, and he got it taken care of. So I always really like that story. But
Yeah. Solomon, man, he like literally. he was so smart. He had those mind games with people. He really made people think. Yeah. So that's, man, I haven't read that story in a while. I'm ready to get back to that one.
Yeah, yeah, I like a lot of the stories in there, man. I just identify with it. Even like Timothy, like it's a lot of them in there that I really grabbed onto and was like, ooh, man,
Yeah.
I like how they move. I like the way that they position themselves. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The different struggles they went through and stuff like that. But yeah, man. So yeah, the next thing we will talk about, y'all, is why even read the Bible? Why? Why should you read it? What do you think, Zach? Why should you read the Bible, man?
Well, there's multiple perspectives, but obviously, if you're a Christian, the Bible is what your faith is based upon. So it's almost like, why wouldn't you read the Bible? If you're a Christian, you should be reading the Bible.
Yeah,
There's no cookie cutter other answer around it. It's if you're if you believe in Jesus and you're not reading the Bible, maybe you need to rethink some things, and maybe you pick it up and start small. Um, if you're not, um, if you're not a Christian, you know, think about kind of what you were saying earlier, like what content is in here that I can apply to my life and make my life better. Um, and there's a whole bunch of it, honestly. Um, and just the stories of just like, I always go back to Job, man, because Job lived just the most intense life, and nothing was going his way, because Satan asked God if he could basically tempt Job and essentially destroy his life to see if he would back away from God. And Job never faltered, and he just kept going. His family was killed. All kinds of crazy stuff happened to him,
yeah,
and he just kept going. And I think that, especially for like a lot of people going through some really intense times, especially like if we get to like the economy and like, a lot of like people living paycheck to paycheck, times are super tough. And so like reading a story like that, you can get some inspiration, and you can really feel like, okay, people have been through this. Even if you don't believe it's not true, you can say, man, I can really learn from this and become a stronger version of myself. Just like, Job is one of many examples. Um, and, if you, the other thing is like, there's a lot of history in the Bible. Um, Things that like, it's kind of funny when people are like, they don't believe that the Bible is historical, because it's like, no, it definitely is. Like, there's time, like there's so many like places specifically, like I think of obviously Israel, but I think about like uh, Egypt, and I think about like all of North Africa, like all that land is talked about in the Bible. Things going on right now in Syria and Turkey, biblical land. Um, so just like interesting perspective from that, from those points of views. Um, yeah, I mean, I just think that it's crazy. There was a study done, and I cannot remember the school's name, but basically they did studies on people that read the Bible one day a week to every day. And you may have seen this because I think I saw it on TikTok actually.
okay,
But they found that people that read the Bible 4 or more times a week, somehow, I don't know how they measured it, but their chances of having depression and anxiety lowered by X number of percentage. Their dopamine and serotonin levels were raised by X percentage. Their quality of relationships with friends and family X number of percentage raised by reading it four or more times a week. So like seeing that, obviously I'm someone, I try to read my Bible every day. It's almost a guaranteed thing, very close to it. But like hearing that makes me want to read it even more because
Mm.
it's like that's I mean, that's your it's called the living word of God. It's like the power that comes from it and the power that you can gain from it just by simply reading a little bit each day. I mean, it's pretty awesome to me. What about you? Why do you read it? I'm curious.
Well, everything is super practical, man. There's a story for everybody. They got a story about a kid, they got a story about a woman, they got a story about a man, they got a story about a couple, they got a story about the hero, they got a story about the villain, it's everything. It literally
Yeah.
encompasses every facet of our lives. A story about a baby. Like there's everything is inside of there. So there's really no reason not to dive into it. Like it's gonna give you great ways to train your children or to, keep your mind healthy, mental health
Yeah.
and stuff like that. It's because focusing on things and releasing that anxiety that you have onto God, onto Jesus allows
Mhm.
you to not harbor it so much because that's that's usually one of the biggest killers. It's a very silent and slept on killer, but it's that depression, man, that own your own lack of self identification and worth and all of that. That's
Yes.
it gives you a measure of like, man, this is messed up. But when you when you read what Jesus said in the Bible of like, throw all your anxiety on me.
Mhm.
And then why are you anxious? Because the birds are fed. Like the birds ain't out around here walking and talking. Uh,
Yeah.
it's just so many different examples that you can see when you read the stories what God is really about. And that's really the main reason why you would want to read it is if
Yeah.
one because it's funny too because I just watched this episode of this dude I started kind of getting into, Dr. Huberman or something like that, and he does
Yep. Huberman. Yeah.
yeah, he'd be doing these interviews. He interviewed this atheist dude, or it was either him or Joe Rogan. I saw it briefly for a moment. And this dude
Uh-huh.
was like, nope, I read the account of Jesus. He was like, no, man, that was it. Like, I switched over. I'm like, dude, because when you because there's no here's what I'll say about that. Here's the reason why I know that, first of all, Jesus was directly sent from God, right? 100% is because this is the only story that you'll ever hear of that nature. And the the things he did, first of all, the things he did, not minus all the super stuff. Like,
Mhm.
let's just go straight into the allowance of the spit on him, the allowance of um them ridiculing him, the allowance
Mhm.
of everything you can think of to make a person have the right to retaliate. I don't care if he was wrong. Everything that was happening to that man was ridiculous. And to have the amount of power, and that's because that's exactly what it is. To have the amount of power to restrain yourself is not of this world. We don't know that. We have no idea what that is.
Well said.
And
Yes.
dude, like I'm like, there's no other story like that. There's no other story that shows the power of restraint to an inhuman level. Like, nope, no matter
Yes.
what, he just restrained himself. It's all good. Like he didn't he could have did everything and to have the most power, right? So you're just the and that's what I want people to do. That's exactly what I want people to do that's watching this. I want you to imagine that you have all the power and ability in the world and you don't use it at all in an act of love towards humanity. Unheard of, unmatched. Like
Yeah.
there's no, I haven't even heard all of them, but I guarantee you, there is not one that is to that level of magnitude and love for people to say that
Hmm.
they don't know what they're doing. Just to even utter those words, do you know how in tune you have to be to say something like that in that type of high pressure situation? Like,
Yes.
I was like, "What?" When I really dove into it just a few years ago, I was like, "Oh, no, this dude had power, no, that's it. That's the answer right there." I was like, "Oh, okay, great, done." Because there's nobody, I mean, sure, can smash, talk about people, witty responses, just all of this stuff, calculations to the moon, all of this stuff we can say that makes you brilliant, makes you powerful, makes you smart, all the money, blah, blah, blah. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
You want to know what real power is? It's mastering that level of self sacrificing love and patience. That is, you can't, there's just no, yeah, there's no comparison, dude. There's just,
There is no.
so
Well, yeah.
that's just why I encourage people to read it because when they get to that part, when they lead up finally to that part, it's gonna take them on a whole emotional roller coaster. They're gonna be like, wait a minute, dude. Wait a
Hmm.
minute. Something's you're gonna feel it. It's because it's encoded into the design because obviously he helped make us. So it's
Yeah.
encoded in you to feel that, oh no, dude, this is real. Like you can
Yes.
feel it. You're like, holy crap, dude. Like it's not just the movie dive into a character, which can get you pretty deep sometimes. There's some movies, some new movies. I'm like, oh love, okay, what am I feeling emotional for? But
Yeah.
but the story, like to be able to read it and dive into that and for it to be so transcendental as it has been, that should tell you something. There's no, I don't, Star Wars ain't even close to that. You know what I mean? Like that, and
Absolutely.
massive, that's a massive shift of people that are like, yo, Star Wars was it. George Lucas, all of that was it. But
Yeah.
if you wanna compare it to something man-made, right? Man created, then it's gonna have a shelf life. Plain and simple. It's gonna have a shelf life.
100%.
And there's no signs of this slowing down, man. There's no signs of this slowing down, dude. Like out of all of the years, there's no signs of this slowing down. And I'm sure they're starting to realize and recognize that. And that's another testament as to why I believe it should be read and why I truly believe that it's gotta be true, dude. How does that work? Like what there's nothing else like
100%.
that. There's nothing else out here like that. So um how did it help you, man? That's what we're gonna go into next. How did it help you? But before we do that, y'all definitely comment and let me know if you wanna read it, if you think you read it and you tried to get into the stories and because a lot of people say they read it, but they ain't read the whole thing. And it's because I
No,
ain't read
no.
the whole thing. I got some pretty solid, like I can remember some pretty solid stuff. I read it a lot
Yeah.
growing up. And I
Yeah.
have a lot of those, I hold a lot of those stories to heart, but I haven't read the entire thing, right?
Yeah.
But I still, even if you can capture some of the books that are in there,
Yeah.
it'll drastically change your understanding, just period. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just let us know. Let us know what you want to do with that. If you want to read it or why you think you should or shouldn't read it, or you don't have to. So now, how did it help you? What do you think, Zach? How does it help you? Or how did it help you?
So just trailing by what you said just few moments ago, you said there's no sign of it slowing down. I mean, they had to take the Bible, in case people don't know this, they had to take the Bible off the bestsellers list because every every year, no book would outsell the Bible. So,
What? They took it
I
off?
mean, come on. They did. They took it off the bestsellers list. Yeah.
It's just been number one
So
for long.
so that yeah.
What?
That yeah.
That's wild, dude. Yeah, that's tripped out.
Um yeah, and I have one more thing to say about that. Like, think about this now. Think about where our world is, and think about how a lot, I'm not going to say everything, but a lot of culture and, think political, think uh, entertainment industry, they're turning their backs against things like Christianity. To me, that just screams that it's going that we're on the right side.
Yeah,
To me, it says when we know that Jesus, or I wanted to say profess, but when we know that Jesus had the ultimate power to have patience and to love people when they were spitting on him and whipping him and laughing at him and mocking him, and he had that intense power, when people are going against that, something ain't right, you know?
right,
Like,
right,
something like,
right,
man, why are we hating on that, you know?
right. It's backwards. It's part of what I'm to do. That's why I'm like, man, it's in the process of waiting for because okay, and here's one thing. With the end times and the Bible and stuff like that that some people
Mhm.
might have a problem with. It's not the only reason why it's gonna get crazy is because of us, right? It's like us. I mean, well,
I
that's
mean, yeah.
the reason us and the devil, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
he's just gonna be pissed. He's gonna be very upset, and that's what's going to cause a lot of things to happen simply because
Mhm.
again if you read it and you see what they give you a glimpse into the things that he's capable of, it's like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, so in the story of Job they show that he pretty much creates the weather because what what happened to his family? What happened to Joe's family? Well, they got some of his daughters and brothers, or yeah, brothers and sisters of his kids got swept up in like a tornado or something like that. And then there was like another storm or something like that that caught another part of his family, and that's where it's like you get a glimpse into what's happening here. It's in plain English, so there's a couple things that I would like to help people to realize is one, that's not that's why I'm saying like that's not God. When people say God took him, it's like he don't do that. He don't need to. Because there's also examples where it shows he just made him disappear, like Enoch. Like, oh, he just took him
Yes.
up. Like, if he want to take you, he just it's gonna be that simple. You don't have to go through anything traumatic. What is that? It's like that never made sense to me, but that's
Yeah.
how I interpret it because I'm like, well, if I'm at this level of magnificence, there's why would I put something or something I love through something tumultuous just so I can get them up to where they're to be with me? That it sounds kind of weird. So I was just like, I'm not gonna grab onto that one. But the idea of what the devil is capable of, it's what we're up against, and that's kind of what I understand because the more you make someone aware of themselves, the more they realize they're doing, and they're like, I probably should stop this. I probably should stop this. It's not a condemning, it's a, how do we prolong this existence? How do we
Mhm.
prolong life? How do we make this thing better? Because that's what we're designed to do. That was the original, if you want to go back to the original orchestration of all of this, it was here you go, be fruitful and become many. It's like, okay. That was the one of the only orders besides just don't touch this thing, okay?
Yep.
But other than that, here you go. So my thought process, which is why I keep this is why I created the new mission statement, because I'm like, no, it's to minimize stress and focus on the good. Simply because that's one of the basic major keys to all of this. So that we can
Mhm.
all get along, we can be more peaceable with each other, we just got real far disconnected from our own selves. And so if we can dial back and just simply get in tune to like, okay, like what's happening here? What are we doing? What is my life about? And what do I really like? And just really diving into yourself and understanding yourself a little more, that's
Mhm.
what's gonna help you to move in that direction anyway. So I'm only trying to help gear it on a very, not more basic than the Bible, but a non-biased way of looking at it. It's a more open way of looking at it because I'm gonna say in what I believe in no matter what. I
100%.
mean, and I'm not, to me, I'm not going to um I don't feel like there's a need for me to try and convince, right? I just speak about what I'm passionate about, what I feel, and like the information that I get from it. And I'm like, you might want to look at it simply because that's how it benefited me. And that's pretty much
Right.
the end of the deal. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
um it helps by, it helps by by if you're a person who likes to relate situations, it helps you to look at it and use it as a mirror, basically, and be like,
Yeah.
okay, if this was me, how would I respond? What can I do?
Yeah.
And if I decide to go in this the individual's direction, what's going to happen in my life? And once
Yeah.
you start, I mean, we got the self-help books and everything like that. Just like I said, all of those help. But this one you'd be surprised. This one you'd be
Yeah.
really surprised, right? It's like you think it's not a self-help book. Well, you might want to reconsider because it's probably the most powerful self-help book. And in fact, a lot of the speakers, that's their foundation. A lot of motivational speakers, and you want to ask, why is that? You want
Yeah.
to ask questions like that for anybody. Again, this is just for people that may be objectively looking at this and they're being like,
Yeah.
well, what is that all about? And then you really but the main factor is you got to dive into it. You got to actually dive
That's
into it and start just really picking apart the stories and stuff like that, and
yeah.
really try and capture them, and not just go in it with a judgmental point of view. Just totally
Mhm.
read it like a fake story if you want to. Go ahead, but it'll surprise you. I'm just gonna leave it at that. It'll really surprise you at the end of the day when even if
Yeah.
you just go into it with that type of a mindset of like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna just read this story of myths and legends." You'll read it and be like, wait a second, I feel something. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not to, again, to push that idea. Um, but try it out. Try it out. But yeah, that's pretty much what I got, man. What you got, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think you hit it on the head there. The one thing that I talked to this guy, used to one of my good friends from where I'm from. Um, we had a conversation one day about like he was like, why do you believe what you believe? And I was like, Jesus is the ultimate person that you want to be like. He just is. He is his demeanor, how he cared for people, how he loved people that hated him, how he, challenged people, um, how he um, really just like a lot of his teachings, like um, Gosh, no, I'm the parables is what I'm trying to get at.
Hmm.
Like, explaining those parables and like listening to how he told stories. And so the people with ears to hear and eyes to see, they understand. Um, I just think that like, because even though we're going to fail, trying to become more like Jesus
Hmm.
is never a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why I think it's so important. Because when it's all, there's so many crazy cool stories in the Bible, but like, you know, really tapping into Jesus and like why he did what he did is like I mean, that's the message. That's the whole message. So yeah, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's again, if anybody wants to put themselves in that position, man, just let me know. Just read it and read it as if it was you. And
Hmm.
let me know. You let me know what's going on. Because that
Yeah.
to me, if everybody acted like that, our problems would be solved pretty much.
Oh,
If we all
100%.
were able to have the capacity fully to really gear ourselves in that direction, there
Yeah.
wouldn't be any problems. I
Yeah.
mean, dead serious. That's just the reality.
Legitimately.
And so that's why I just was like, oh yeah, no, if everybody acted like this, we'd be fine. So why
Yeah.
not go in this direction? It just makes sense to me, but yeah, because I don't yeah, it doesn't it don't what I can really help people to understand is don't just get into the idea of if it was real or not. Because that I think the sense of a human being trying to prove something is a very strong sense within us, period.
Yeah.
No matter
Yeah.
what it is. And
Yeah.
so that's what kind of gets in the way of a lot of really good things that can benefit our lives. And if we just got into the mode of thinking like, okay, how do we improve, period, human wise, um, a lot of that stuff would be thrown by the wayside, and it would be more widely ac- uh, accepted and taught. So,
Yeah.
but that is all we got for y'all today. I want to thank you again very much, guys, for watching this. Again, if you like mindset topics, this is the place to be. And so please like and subscribe. That'll help us keep going. And then, um, like always, mindset matters more than anything else. What your mind is set on will show you where you're going. And then always remember to focus on the good because the negative is there. It's rampant. It's running wild. So just let it do that. But you, as much as you can, try to focus your mind on good things. Okay. But other than that, we'll see you guys next time. Anytime is Zach.